All right, welcome to another episode of What's the Story? I have a very special guest on today, Dr. Skipper Marley. Is that okay to call you?
Yeah, that's great.
I love it. I love it. He's here to tell us all about his Disney experiences, publishing books, and a bunch of other fun stuff, even maybe some video games, which we discussed just a minute ago. So without further ado, Dr. Skipper Marley,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm very glad to have you on. I'm glad you accepted the invite.
Yeah.
So obviously, Skipper Marley, and I mentioned Disney, you were a skipper on the Jungle Cruise?
I was, yeah. Spent about 3.5 years as a skipper out in California, world famous Jungle Cruise.
And how long ago was that?
I worked there one summer in '96, and then I came back from early 2002 to late 2004.
Okay.
So
Did
it's
you
been a
work?
while. I left when my first daughter was born, and I still blame her for that.
Aw.
Yeah,
Does she feel guilty about that, or she's just like, nah, you move past it?
she could care less. She's
Oh,
like,
she could
whatever,
care less.
Dad. Yeah, yeah, you know.
And did you do any other positions at the park, or were you only a skipper for Jungle Cruise?
I was one of the rare people that was only a skipper. I worked
Oh,
the Tiki Room because you had to work the Tiki Room if you learned jungle. Um,
really?
and then everybody does like parade shifts and works Fantasmic. But almost everybody I know got trained other places, and I flat out refused because I was going to grad school and I was teaching at Cal State Fullerton. And so that was my fun job, going to Disneyland. And I said, I don't want to have to measure kids and tell people to put on their seatbelt. Said, I don't want to be responsible. I want to come here and have fun and tell jokes. So yeah, I flat out refuse to go anywhere else.
That's a really good point, because pretty much anybody can get on the Jungle Cruise, and like you said, disappointing kids and telling them that they need to do this or do that, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't want to be responsible. Heaven forbid.
So you mentioned you had to do the Tiki Room as well. Why is that?
Yeah. Um, at some point, I think in the '70s or '80s, they decided to link it to the Jungle Cruise.
Hmm.
So there were usually 3 people who would work at Tiki, and they would just train you. So training at Jungle Cruise was 3 days long, and the first day was all at Tiki, which is really easy to run. So it was kind of fun when your voice got. They mostly used it so if you got really tired or your voice was shot, they'd move you to the Tiki Room for a week or so you could rest your voice. Or when you got seniority, you would work there because it was like a nice air-conditioned break room, right? You get that. You live where it's hot. In
Oh
the
yeah,
summer, you're like, oh yeah, sit in air conditioning for 20 minutes. Yeah, okay, okay.
I could
You,
do
you,
that.
you can pay me to do that. Yeah. So it was a pretty nice break. Some people hated it, but most skippers really liked working there because it was just kind of relaxing.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So how many trips do you think you did a day on average?
I think it averaged, that's something I just wrote about today, between 25 to 30 trips a
Okay.
day. Yeah, which is a lot.
That is a lot of repeating the same things over and over, or could you change it up a little bit?
Um, I mixed it up a lot. In the era that I was there, we were kind of just like I became a trainer, so I had to have a copy of the script and I would train people. And I remember my trainees would say stuff. I'm like, that's a horrible joke. And they're like, it's in the script. And I would look through it and I'm like, oh, it is. Like I had no idea. I did one joke that was on the script. Everything else was stuff I wrote or I stolen from my friends. And so I had a long version of the trip, a short version, a version for people that didn't speak English, and then I
Wow.
would mix it up based on if I got bored or not. And I tried to write a new joke every day, not just improv something, but just to keep me mentally alert. I said, every day I'm going to write a new joke. It may not be good, but I'm going to write one. In addition to the improving stuff, but I'll write a joke I could use again in the future. Not that I maybe ever did, but yeah, you got to find a way to beat the monotony.
Fair point. Did anybody ever get upset that you weren't sticking to the script?
No, the only joke you had to do uh, was the backside of water. If
Okay.
you did not do, and this is how arrogant I was when I got there. I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to get a joke better than the backside of water. I'm going to write one, and it's going to be better. And for
Uh,
3.5 years, I tried, and I failed miserably. I would come up with jokes I thought were good, and the boat. Not only would they just stare at me, sometimes they get mad. They're like,
really?
"What's the back? You got to do the backside of water." So At night, I didn't always do it because there was other jokes you could do
Mhm.
uh, that worked better than saying backside of water. But during the day, you just had to say it.
I've never taken a boat cruise at night. Recently, about a month ago, we took a trip, and that was the first time I did the Jingle Cruise, but I've never taken one at
Oh,
night.
you got to do the Jungle Cruise. I've interviewed maybe over 100 skippers at this point from every era, from people that worked there in the 50s to people that work there right now. Every single one of them prefers working there at night
Okay.
because it's a whole different experience. The jungle is darker, things look creepier. There's fewer kids, so you can do wilder jokes. Not like blue comedy, but you can do different jokes than you can with little kids on the boat. It's a whole different experience. It's like two different rides. The day and the night version are very different from each other.
I will have to go on it at nighttime
Yeah,
next time I go.
yeah,
Yeah,
you got to
like
do
you
it.
said, different levels of kids because the little kids want to go and see the fireworks with the parents, and the bigger kids want to keep doing rides.
Yep, yep. And during the day, the focus is on keeping the boats moving because the crowds are there. And at night, it's not so crowded, so we can take our time. And when a skipper can take their time, and if the boat's into it, uh, it can get really funny. You can have a really good time out there.
Very cool. Do you
Yeah.
have to do different training for at night because it's darker and you have to be able to see better, or is it just kind of
No,
experience?
during the 3 days of training, one of the days you're there is at night.
Okay.
So you have one shift that starts in the morning, so you can see how to open the ride, and then one's at night, so you can see how to close it. But when you're a new person, almost all of your shifts are at night.
Really?
So yeah, that's where all the people with seniority work during the day. But like at night on the weekends is when all the rookies are there, which is interesting because that's when the park is super busy.
That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you ever had guests come through line that specifically ask for your boat?
Sometimes, yeah. Um, and you'll see skippers that get like reputations and get known, and people will want to come see them. What was weird is you only know it, even your friends that you work with every day, you may not ever know their last name. You just know everybody's first name and maybe a nickname to figure out, this Matt versus that Matt. There's might
Okay.
be a nickname attached. But I was backstage one day, and one of the leads, who's like the manager of the ride, comes up and he's like, "Hey, are you a professor?" I was like, yes.
Huh?
Why? Because people kept coming for Dr. Marley, and we're like, we don't know who that is. He goes, and so I looked through the roll sheet, and your last name is Marley.
Ah,
And I said, and I did because I hadn't told anybody because I was just there I just want to have fun.
right.
And I'm like, yeah, that's me. They're looking for. He's like, okay,
Okay. Well, that's pretty neat.
yeah. So but mostly the people that would ask for you are your friends and family.
That makes sense.
So yeah,
Do they ever try and mess you up while you're doing the tour?
friends and family.
Yeah.
No, but it happened anyway. We called it the family curse. That if
Uh-oh.
your family got on your boat would be awful. And it happened. You would get your family in on a boat, and you really want to do a good job for your mom and dad or your brothers, and then like they'd put a bunch of like little kids in the back who'd scream and yell, or just
Oh, no.
something would go wrong every time. So jungle we called it the family curse. Yeah.
That's funny. I mean,
Yeah.
not funny because it would ruin everything, but, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was a strange. I think because there was so much pressure the skipper put on themselves to do a good job that they just anything that looked bad they just kind of amplified it as being this worst thing that it really was.
Well, sometimes the mess ups are the most fun.
Right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, I always enjoy going to watch, like, the animal shows later at night because everybody's getting tired, so the animals want to misbehave more, and it's more fun that way.
Right? Yeah, they're tired. They want to do what they want. I've done this 3 times already. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. It's always more fun.
Did you ever have any emergencies while you were out on a cruise?
Um, I didn't. I was very fortunate that way. But I've had friends that had medical emergencies out there with guests. Um, I only had a boat break down one time.
Hmm.
I was getting ready to leave the dock, and the manager runs up and hops on the bow of my boat, and there's a little control panel, and he starts tapping one of the dials. Like, what are you
Oh.
doing? He's like, no, don't worry about it. And he taps it. Yeah, you're good. And he walks away, and I'm like, and I had been there maybe like a month, so I didn't know. I'm like, wait, what
Oh.
does that what does that mean? He's like, you'll go. And the engine died once out in the jungle, and I got it to start again, and I drove about another 100 yards, and it died again, and then you could hear like steam and stuff with the back engine, and
Oh, no.
it wouldn't start. So you shoot the pistol, right? You give the signal, you shoot the gun a couple of times so they know what the problem is. And his boat, they'll back a boat up to you, and
Wow.
evidently when I left the jungle, he started pulling boats because he knew my boat was going to break down.
And he just let you go.
Yeah, so he was ready. And so he comes whipping around. I thought, you'll be out here for 20, 30 minutes. And like 5 minutes later, his boat comes pulling up and they tie my boat up to his and they drag me back to the dock. And he's like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have taken you out. I just should have, because your boat was already full. So I figured maybe he'll make it.
Oh, wow. Take the
Yeah,
chance.
right? So the guests got to have a few extra minutes out in the jungle.
That's
So,
cool.
but when you're there for a while, when you're new, that stuff terrifies you because all you know is the script.
Uh-huh.
You're terrified of what'll happen, and then after a while, you hope stuff breaks down because you want to joke. And so when you're behind a boat that's having a problem, you're like, sweet, we're gonna be here for 10 minutes, and then you can just go nuts and have fun with people, and it's a blast. Yeah,
That sounds like a lot of fun.
yeah, yeah.
So I don't know anybody personally that's ever worked at the parks. What's the hiring process like, if you can talk about that?
And you live in Florida. How's that possible?
I know people from Universal. I go there more, but I don't know
Okay,
anybody from Disney.
I could see that from your Instagram. You do go to Universal a lot.
Yeah.
All right, I have a Universal question for you later
Okay.
that I wrote down to ask you specifically.
Okay.
So
I hope I can answer it.
you can't. You will be. Yeah, you will.
Okay.
But don't let me forget to ask you. Okay.
All right.
Okay, please. Thank you. Wait, what was your question? I told you I was good at getting people distracted.
If you can talk about it, what's the hiring process like?
The hiring process, well, it's changed a lot thanks to that thing called the internet.
Mm.
But it's a really long process. It's much more involved than you would think. Like I walked in, like when I moved to Washington, D.C. to go to grad school, I thought, well, I need a job. So I walked into a restaurant and 20 minutes later, I walked out with an apron. They're like, cool, I start tomorrow. I'm going to work at a restaurant. And at Disneyland, I actually tried to get hired there once before I actually got hired. Like I walked in and I said, I want to be a Jungle Cruise skipper. And I filled out all the paperwork and I had my interview and said, I want to be a skipper. And they're like, all we have open is janitorial or like nighttime maintenance. I said, no, I want to be a skipper. He said, this is all we have. And he smiled. He goes, take it or leave it. And I stood up and I said, have a good day. And I walked out.
Bye.
I think they were really surprised. It's like, well, I had a job. This is going to be like a fun night job.
Right.
But I knew a lot of people. Before this interview, I reread the intro to both of my skipper books because I hadn't read them in a while. And I remembered when I first went to work there in 2002, I was a buddy with a guy. We both got hired and you have to go to Disney University for a couple days.
Mm-hmm.
And he really wanted Jungle Cruising. He was funny. He would have been a good skipper. And on the third day, they give you a piece of paper that says where you're going. And because I'd kind of made a deal, I already knew mine was going to say Jungle Cruise. And his said Tomorrowland. And he's like, no, I don't want it. And he was like begging. They were like, sorry, take it or leave it.
Wow.
They're like, in 6 months you can transfer. And I never saw him again. I don't know if he even worked. I don't even know if he tried to transfer or whatever.
Oh.
But I thought he would have been so good. So the problem with getting hired at Disney is when you walk in the door to get a job, they have like a bunch of boxes to fill. And you may want to work as a janitor, you may want to work in parades, you may want to work where Haunted Mansion, but he's got he needs to fill 100 jobs today, and they're all working at this one taco stand, and that's it.
Oh.
And if you don't want to work there, it sucks to be you. Come try later. And
right.
So what I did was I found a manager at Adventureland. And I met him and I said, hey, I'm going to apply to work here. I want to be a Jungle Cruise skipper, want to do it my whole life. And so I chatted with him. And the guy's like, here, give him my name when you apply. Tell him I said you should be a skipper.
Mm.
So when I applied, he's like, there aren't openings in Adventureland. And he said there are. And he called him and said, okay, you're going to Adventureland.
Wow.
But he was almost mad at me about it because he was trying to put people at California Adventure because that was still a new park.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he was shoving it. That's where everybody had to go that got hired. So both of my books are filled with stories of skippers that are like, one guy I interviewed, a friend of mine, is now an Imagineer.
Wow.
And he is like, he's the guy that invented Jingle Cruise.
Really?
His name's Kevin Lively, and he's a great Imagineer. He was a super funny skipper. It took him almost 8 months to get to the Jungle Cruise because they kept sending, his major in college was communications with an emphasis on public speaking. And they sent him to Splash Mountain. And then they sent him somewhere else. And he's like, I want to do Jungle Cruise. They're like, you'll have it. And then they sent him to Main Street. Here, drive Main Street vehicles. He's
It's
like,
not public speaking.
I want to work Jungle Cruise. So you look at him and you're like, how is Kevin Lively not a Jungle Cruise skipper? And how could they miss somebody who's clearly that destined to work there? So
Right.
it's, I know I would love to find out from the HR point of view at Disney, but it seems like they're trying to put bodies in slots that they need. And what your desires are really secondary. Yeah,
Yeah. They just need to fill what they need to fill, and that's that.
exactly. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I imagine it's the same at all theme parks.
I would imagine so, right? When you have that big of an employment pool you need to fill, yeah, that they're just looking for bodies in places. But when I was a trainer, I would train people at Jungle. They were giddy. It was like their dream. And those
Oh,
people were easy to train. I could take credit for them being funny, but they walked in the door funny. And then there were other people that were like, I have to talk. I don't want to do this job. And I would just think of that guy that went to Tomorrowland. I'm like, he would kill for this opportunity.
right.
I'm like, if you don't want to work here, I will get you to another spot, and I would help them transfer to another location where they would maybe like it better.
That was actually my next question was, did you have anybody that didn't want to be there? And there it was.
That was it. Or if they were really bad, there were some people that were just they weren't being safe, or they were really cocky. I know how to do this, and they were just cocky and arrogant or just bad. If we liked them, we would try to send them someplace that was open they might like. If they were bad, I would have them sent. Does Disney World have Toontown?
I believe it still has a small section.
Okay, Toontown is like the worst place to work at Disneyland because it was built, although it's on Earth, it was somehow built 10 feet away from the surface of the sun. So it's super hot, and it's like billions of strollers get shoved in there. And so
Oh,
I would send people to Toontown. And so there was one manager, I would call him and say, hey, I got somebody for Toontown. Because we had this one guy that was just, wasn't one of my trainees, but my buddy who was training him didn't know what to do with him because he was super arrogant. And I don't even need this stupid job. This job, I'll do whatever I want. But so I called him. I said, hey, I got somebody for Toontown. And the manager walks up to the guy. He's like, hey, I have a brand new opportunity that just opened up. You're going to love it. It's a brand new, you won't have to be out here in the jungle where it's hot and you're talking to people. It's an opportunity in Toontown. You're going to love it. Come with me. And he gives us a thumbs up and walks away. The guy turns around and goes, bye, suckers.
nice.
And we all started laughing because we're like, you're going to have a miserable life. You have no idea where we just sent you.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you're gonna be like that, why be around people that are trying to have a good time?
Why work at Disneyland if that's going to be your attitude? Exactly.
Right.
He probably didn't last too long. Or he became the president of the park. One or the other. Those are the two options.
He became the president of the Strollers.
Exactly. He became Stroller King. That's what
There
he
you
was.
go.
Oh, strollers.
I saw a picture that I believe you posted the other day about you parking strollers.
Yeah.
Was
That's
that for Jungle Cruise?
Yep. Adventureland is, especially at Disneyland, is one of the most congested places in the park. There's really only one entrance and one exit. It's a narrow street. And people just park their strollers anywhere. And it used to bother me before I had kids. It's like, these people suck. And after I had kids, I'm like, why would you ever leave your stroller some random spot? Like,
Yeah.
I got angrier after I had kids. I'm like, you should get it out of the way for people. But there's just a ton of strollers, and people just literally just park them wherever they think they want. And I have a bad stroller story if you want to hear it. It's good.
Sure.
But it's bad Disney cast member service. It was a rare time I was doing a parade shift up by Fantasyland. It was me and another Jungle Cruise skipper. And the parade's about to start, and we had this one little triangle area that said no strollers in it. This guy parks his stroller in it, bumps the sign that says no strollers, looks at me and says, this better be here when I get back. And he and his family walked to the line to Small World, and we're watching him. I'm like, what a jackass. And I said, you should take that stroller somewhere where he can't find it.
Oh
And my
no.
buddy goes, got it. And when they got on the boat and you saw them go inside Small World, he just took it and walked it into Toontown. And
Oh no.
he's never going to find that stroller. And then later on, we were like, we should probably move our location because when he comes out, he's going to be really angry.
Oh yeah, he's gonna be looking for you.
Yeah, he's going to be looking for us. So, yeah, because we were taking strollers and sticking them in one spot, but we'd line them up nice so that people could find them. So we tried to be really respectful of that. But it was the only time I'd seen somebody be real rude and aggressive about it. So I bet he had a fun evening. So
I bet he did.
But when I would go to the park with my kids, I was always super, super nice to people because I didn't want that happening to me. I'm like, where should I
Yeah.
park this? Thank you very much.
Yeah, you hear about these horror stories about people just being rude to people that work there, the staff members, and it's just the cast members. It's crazy. Like, why? They're just there to help you.
Yeah, and most cast members will put up with it, and Jungle Cruise I think Jungle Cruise skippers will pretend to put up with it, and then do things to you when you're gone. So, yeah,
So don't make fun of skippers.
don't hassle skippers.
Don't
Yeah,
hassle skippers.
we are the Illuminati. We will find you. Yeah.
So kind of turning, I want to go back to this, but I want to also know, how did the recent pandemic, still ongoing pandemic, kind of affect how you went to the park, and how did you
Oh,
feel about that?
the eternal pandemic. Well,
Yeah.
let me tell you. Here's. Let me tell you what a genius I am. You ready for this?
Okay.
Shows you what a brilliant human being I am. I haven't had an annual pass in about 5 years. I bought one the week before the park shut down.
Wow.
I'm like, you know what? I told my wife, honey, let's go get annual passes. So we used them one time, and then the park shut down. So we're still paying for them. Uh, so I figured, all right. So when the pandemic's over, I'll have a paid off annual pass. So
Yeah.
I guess that's the upside. So, but it's the way it's affected me. A lot of my friends still work there, and a lot of my students from Cal State Fullerton work there, and a lot of them are in big economic trouble because
I believe it.
this was their livelihood. And a lot of my friends that even work up at the Disney studios up in Burbank um, have been laid off and don't know if they're going to return. And so
Wow.
it's real. Um, they're really worried. It's really terrifying for them. Yeah. And I've been to downtown Disney with the new COVID. I know Disney Springs is open and the parks there in Florida are
Mhm.
open. And I think if they opened them in California, people would flood to it and then COVID would get even worse here. Because I've been to downtown Disney a couple times and it was a little too crowded, even with all of the strict rules and lines,
Yeah.
just a bit much. So we haven't been back in maybe a month and a half or so.
Gotcha. I know I feel like since everything's open here, everything's open everywhere, and I forget that parks are still closed everywhere else.
Yeah, yeah. So I've seen it with I watched videos of like the Jungle Cruise in Florida with the shields up and everything and all the stores, and I thought I don't even want to go to Disneyland until all of that stuff is down, till like COVID is over and we can go back to the way it was. I don't want to be seeing shields up everywhere, and I don't know. I'd rather not go to the COVID version of these things.
I could definitely, after going to that and now wanting
Yeah,
to have that back, like it's nice not having as many people in the park because you're not constantly bumping into people. And the line, I think the line spacing is nicer because you're not crammed against people, but the lines are
yeah,
so long.
yeah. Huh. Interesting.
Like we were gonna go on the Jungle Cruise and we had to do the entire line for Jungle Cruise, and then they lined us up along the Swiss Family Robinson River and past the entrance to that.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, I love these rides, but the lines are so long, and they move not fast, but you're moving bigger distances, so it seems
Yeah,
faster, and it's just crazy.
but it's still wow. Okay, interesting. Interesting.
Even like the line for Haunted Mansion, you're obviously they're not doing the stretching room because they can't crowd people together, so you skip that. But they have you lined from where you get on the ride all the way through the house, all the way through the regular queue, and then they had us go down the ramp that goes to the Rivers of America, all the way down the Rivers of America, and back up onto the street by the Country Bear Jamboree.
Wow. How do they skip the stretching room?
I don't know. We walk through it, but we don't get to stay. Like it's fully
Oh,
stretched, so you get to see it fully stretched, but you don't get to experience
oh,
it stretching.
okay, okay. I
Yeah,
forgot. Because in Florida, it's all on the one level. Because in California, it really is an elevator that
yep.
drops you down. And I'm like, in California, you couldn't skip.
No,
You couldn't skip the stretching room because it's the elevator that takes you under the trains. I forgot. I forgot. Florida, yeah, whole different thing.
I know there's so many different things about the California park that I want to go to and experience.
Yeah, a buddy of mine said when I went to Walt Disney World for the first time was just in 2017, and my buddy goes, "You'll like Disney World. It's like Disneyland, but everything's just slightly wrong. Like some of the buildings are too tall, and you're used to walking out of one ride and walking like 30 feet to the next one,
Yep.
but the next one is 60 feet away, and you're like, well, That seems a lot farther away. So everything's just kind of more
Spread out.
spread out. But I loved it. I spent a week there with a buddy of mine, the guy that did all the artwork for my book covers, another
Okay.
skipper, guy named TK. We spent a week there together for a skipper reunion. It was a wet East Coast
Oh,
skipper reunion that I got invited to. So I got to meet all these East Coast skippers. So we got to spend some time at the park, and one of my friends is an Imagineer who works there. He was working on the Toy Story Land before it opened.
okay.
So we'd go in the park, wherever, and then he would text us, like, where are you? And then he would come meet us, and then we would get like the Imagineering tour of wherever park we were in that day.
Wow.
It was very fun to have him tell us stuff, and he'd spent 3 years in Shanghai, so he'd tell us about working in Shanghai, building Shanghai Disneyland, but we got spoiled, so I can't wait to go back to Florida and go to Walt Disney World. I'm looking forward to it.
Do you like the California park better or the Orlando parks better? Because I hear reviews about both, and people like this one or that one.
Well, I have to say Disneyland is better. I'm just required to say that.
Okay.
So, one thing I loved, I thought I would like it, but I ended up becoming mildly obsessed with it, is Animal Kingdom.
Really?
That is, if you don't count Disneyland, it is my favorite Disney park in the
Okay.
world. And a buddy of mine that's been to almost all of them said that Disney Tokyo Sea is his best favorite. But other than that, it's the Animal Kingdom. Animal Kingdom is just, although right now I'm working on a book on the history of the Jungle Cruise.
Mhm.
And so the first chapter is all about how Walt wanted real animals there and the problems they went through where you can't have real animals and a boat ride. And when I was on the Kilimanjaro Safari, I'm like, this is what Walt wanted.
Yeah.
Like Joe Road finally, the technology exists to build the ride that Walt wanted in the 50s. And we're like, the whole park is kind of a giant jungle cruise kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we were told, oh yeah, Animal Kingdom, it's a half day park. It's a half. So we went there 1/2 day, and then in 1 week we went back 2 more times for a full
Wow.
day because we just loved it. Yeah,
Was that when Avatar opened? I don't remember the exact year.
it was. We were there in early 2017, so they were building it,
Okay.
so we could see the floating rocks and all that stuff. But we didn't go in, which is okay because I think Avatar is an awful movie.
I never saw it.
It's so bad. Uh, and we wish they would have built Wakanda Land. If you're going to do something, build Black
Yeah.
Panther's Land. There you go, Wakanda. Boom. $1 million idea, Disney. You're welcome.
$1 billion idea.
Right? It's not even my idea, but still, that's something I would have done.
And it's funny because, like you said, most people say it's a half-day park, and I've maybe had 1 or 2 people say it was their favorite, but everybody else just kind of skips it. They say, yeah, whatever. So I'm surprised to hear that that's actually one of your favorites.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's when I take my family, that's another fun story. We were going to go this February 2020. We're going, and my wife's like, "Honey, we should wait. We should pay some bills and blah blah. Let's go in October." So I'm like, "Oh," and I was mad. I'm like, "Okay, all right, we'll go in October of 2020." And then boom, the world explodes. So all year long, I'm like, we should have gone in February. We should have gone in February. So I've been that jerk to my wife all year long. So I think we're going to go in February 2022.
Okay.
We might come in October of this year, 2021. We might come in the fall when it's not so hot and humid and then
Yes.
not so crowded. Yeah, but we went
Yeah.
in February and the weather was just perfect. Just perfect.
It is really nice when it's kind of cool, but it's not hot yet.
It's not crowded. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a great time to go.
So do you have, besides Jungle Cruise, do you have a favorite ride at any of the parks?
My favorite ride at the Disney parks is, besides Jungle, is Splash Mountain.
Okay.
Love Splash Mountain. And part of that's because I like the history of they're taking all they're getting rid of the Song of the South element,
Right.
which I'm not happy about because those are actually slave stories that were told.
Mm-hmm.
And so people think, well, they're racist. I'm like, but they're based on real African American history about freedom from oppression and fighting. They're great. And so it's sad that that's being lost. But my other favorite roller coaster ride in any Disney park is Expedition Everest.
I actually just recently experienced that last month.
What
My
did you
first
think?
ride. I liked it. I was
Yeah.
I was upset at the fact that the Yeti doesn't move anymore because I know of like the construction issues. So I wish I would have rode it earlier to see him swipe at the car, but it was still a really cool ride.
Yeah, I didn't know that he did that until after I went on the ride, that he used to be scarier. But I just remember coming up when you're going up and then the tracks just bend and are
Yep.
broken. And I'm like,
What
that's
now?
pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about it. I like to go into those rides kind of fresh and not, I don't want to watch videos about it or know, so I can kind of experience it. Um, so I tried not to read up on any of those things, but I loved it.
Such a
So
fun ride.
yeah, it is. But yeah, that's awesome. Splash Mountain's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite ride at another park?
At like a non-Disney park?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I haven't been. Oh, I went to Universal Studios Hollywood in almost a year ago for the first time in maybe 10 years. And I went on the Harry Potter flight, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, where you go through the rides inside the castle.
Yes, and
Yeah.
you're sitting forward to a chair, and it leans you forward and turns you and
Yep.
twists. That was quite that. I wanted to ride that. We did it like 2 more times that day. It was a lot.
Really.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
I wish I had your kind of stomach. One ride on that, and I'm done for the day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It could bother me, but I'm just not that smart. So I just go back for more later. Be like, oh no, yeah, because they wanted to go on after we ate, and I'm like, no,
Oh
no,
no.
not again, not again.
I take 2 Dramamine pills. I take ginger gum. I have the wristbands, and I'm like, okay, maybe I can do it this time.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you
That's
been on the Hagrid's Magical Motorbike Adventure here in Orlando?
no. That was my question for you. When
Ah,
when we come to Florida, I was just going to stay at Disney and not go to Universal Studios. Do you think that would be bad of me? Should I take the family there for a day?
in October?
Yeah, or whenever we go, October or February.
So I would say if you're gonna go in October, you have to get to the park early because they close it earlier due to Halloween Horror Nights, so you wouldn't have as much time
Oh,
there.
okay,
Yeah, so it's probably better to go in February.
okay.
Um, what kind of rides what does your family like? Because there's the 2 different parks, so it's
Yeah.
obviously a little bit less if you want to do one over the other.
I think my wife and I like roller coasters more than our daughters do. I don't think they care for them very much.
Okay.
One's
Um,
more roller coaster heavy than the other.
because there's the one big roller coaster in Universal, and there's also an indoor roller coaster in Universal that are fast. And then there's the Harry Potter roller coaster, which is kind of a family coaster. But Islands of Adventure has the Hulk, and it has Hagrid's, and they're
Okay.
going to be opening the Velocicoaster sometime this summer, or
I,
maybe
I
it's
just saw that online.
yeah. So they're going to have 3 big coasters if you want to do that park over
Okay.
Universal. But Universal's a lot of simulators and family rides, where Islands of Adventure is you obviously have the water rides and the bigger roller coasters. So
Oh, so maybe we'll do that one because Universal Studios Hollywood was everything was a simulator, and
yeah,
after a while, I'm like, well, this is boring. Like when I was for a while when I was a little kid, going to Universal Studios Hollywood was my favorite park because you would really drive through movie sets, and I remember
yeah,
my favorite TV shows were being filmed, and we had to stop and we got to watch them film a scene of like our favorite show, and you'd see real props and real stuff, and now it's you barely get to see the studio at all, and it's a lot more. Here's another ride with a giant screen in it that you can wiggle back and forth, and so we left. I'm like, yeah, I don't care if I ever come back again. It's
yeah.
yeah,
I feel the same way. The simulator rides let you see more, but it's less interactive, less of an experience, I think.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like okay, I'm watching a giant TV screen.
Yep, I can do that at home. I can do that at the
Yeah,
movie theater.
exactly, exactly. Yeah,
Like
exactly.
I miss Jaws, and I miss Back to the Future is still there, but it's Simpsons now, so same ride concept. But like I miss Back to the Future and Jaws and like the original confrontation because they were interactive with the big animatronics, and it's just not
Oh
the same.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I liked it better when I was a little kid. That kind of set me down a rabbit hole because I was researching. I was like, was it just because I was little and dumb, or is it because it really had other cool stuff? So I researched. I'm like, yeah, okay, it did. Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I would recommend um, Islands of Adventure for coasters. Hagrid's is actually my favorite coaster I've ever ridden, like ever.
Ever. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of elements that um, I'm not going to spoil for you.
Okay.
There's a couple of surprises,
Nice.
so I'll leave those for you.
Nice.
And like I said, Velocicoaster is going to be opening this year, so definitely Islands of Adventure for bigger rides.
Okay. Cool.
Also, if you go, does Universal Hollywood do Grinchmas?
They do, yeah, they do like a, yeah.
Okay, because I was gonna say that's also a thing here in December. If you've never experienced that, that's a lot of fun.
Okay, cool. No, yeah, they do that. And they do the Halloween Horror Night thing too.
Yes. Have you ever done that?
No, I never have. I auditioned. There's a park out here called Knott's Berry Farm,
Yes.
and I auditioned to be one of their monsters for Knott's Scary Farm.
Hmm.
And it was a really weird thing because I'm a tall guy. I'm 6'4", 215 pounds. So I walked in. I'm like, they're gonna want me to be a monster. The guys, oh, you'd make a great monster, which is a compliment. And then you realize I feel attacked. I feel,
Oh no.
but I'm not. So I went through the audition and like they're having me fill out paperwork. And as I'm doing it, I'm like, I had like a really weird moment. I'm like, I don't think I want to do this. Like, I don't want
Hmm.
to sit there and just yell and scream and be angry all the time. Like, oh, you got to yell and just be mean. And I'm like, I don't think I want to do that 8 hours a day at night. And I think it was my Disney training that ruined me. I'm like,
Yeah.
I shouldn't be trying to like terrify these people. And it was a semester that I wasn't teaching. And so I wasn't supposed to be teaching. And I thought, well, and so I took it home. They're like, well, you're still going to be hired. And here's your start date. And I took all the stuff home and I was debating it, but didn't think I was going to do it. And then I got a call from Fullerton. They're like, yeah, we have these night classes. Will you teach all these?
There you
So
go.
I'm not, sorry, I can't. I can't be a monster. I got to go scare people in real life.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was fun to go through the process, I guess.
Okay, but you've never experienced it.
I did. I went to not Scary Farm once. Yeah,
Okay. Not something you really enjoyed? Not really your thing?
I had just moved back to California after living for 5 years in Washington D.C. And when you live in D.C., the one thing that happens is you do not let people sneak up on you.
Ah.
Because almost all of my friends had been mugged at some point.
Wow.
And so I would look at corners and I just by force of habit, I would look. And there was a guy coming out and he stopped when he saw me. And I nudged and I like nodded him, I had him like follow me. And I was holding my wife's hand and I just let go and he just picked it up and started walking
Oh,
with
that's
her.
perfect.
And we just kind of switched spots. And as he went by, he went, thanks. He like whispered thanks in my ear. And she screamed and it was, I was in such
That's
trouble.
great.
It was a beautiful moment. So my paranoia of living in DC, I think, ruined some of the fun. Just,
Makes sense, though.
yeah, I didn't want people sneaking up on me. So,
I
but
get that.
yeah, I might go back and redo the knots thing one day. It might, it could be fun. I think
Absolutely.
maybe, yeah, yeah.
I like the Halloween Horror Nights experience as going through like the movies. So you get to like live your movies.
A buddy of mine got to be Jason, and
Really?
he hung out at the Bates Motel set
Ah.
at Universal Studios Hollywood, and he would like run out and chase this girl and attack her, and there'd be blood everywhere, and he said, and then they'd have to clean it up. A crew would come out and wash some of the blood away to get ready for the next group, and he loved it. He said it was so much fun to do.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, and
Just
he
getting
was
to
a
scare
network
people.
skipper, so he liked being a villain for once.
There you go.
Yeah,
Get to show the other side of yourself.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, have you been to any of the other Disney worlds around the world, or just the ones here in the U.S.?
I have not, just the ones to the U.S. And I've only been to the Florida one just a couple years ago.
Right.
So I want to go to. Some of my good friends have been to the ones in Japan and said they're just stunning, um, especially Tokyo Disney Sea, which several people have told me is their favorite park in the world.
Wow.
Just have to see it. And my buddy that worked in Shanghai talked a lot about it, and I found out one of my best friends just got a job in Hong Kong.
Wow.
So he's like, I got a house. You and your wife can come stay with us for free. And I'm like, done.
There you go.
Like now I can stay somewhere so we can afford to, go to Hong Kong and go to Disney World. So yeah, so it's weird that I'm writing about at least the jungle cruises at these different parks. And I've just seen videos of them and talked to people that have been there and then interviewed some skippers that have worked at some of them uh, in Asia, but have not been there. And I'd love to go to Disneyland Paris too. That would be fantastic.
I always see pictures about it, and it just looks beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. Read books about it. I've met some of the Imagineers that helped design some of these places, but have not got to see them yet.
You know a lot of really cool people.
It's part of being out here. So it was all accidental. Just a lot of my
Really?
friends that I worked with at Disneyland stayed with the company and worked their way up.
Ah,
So 3 guys that I just worked with are now Imagineers.
that's really
And
cool.
one of them, another guy is the official photographer of Disneyland. And they're just
Wow.
guys I started to work with who've worked their way up. And then they introduced me to these people. And I belong to this Disney history group that's kind of approved by the company. So I go to their events every year and they hold them out at the Disney lot. And so Imagineers come there. So you get to meet these just like Tony Baxter and all these other great Imagineering guys that were there. And people, well, when I hung out with Walt, and they'll just tell these stories like
Cool.
someone will tell a story about Walt and everyone's like, oh, yeah, that was Walt. And I just sit there like, sure, yeah, sure.
Sure.
That's
Yep. Whatever you said, that sounds just
sure.
like him.
He died before I was born, but sure, yes. Walt, I remember Walt so well.
That's
So
really cool.
yeah, that's kind of how that's how I kind of got to meet these people. My friends just kind of worked their way up and I rode their coattails.
Did you so there's obviously like the secret club at Disney and you walk by it in going into Adventureland, there's a door off to the left, but it's for like the super elite.
Yeah.
What do you know about that? Or do you know
Um,
anything about that?
it's called Club 33. And
$33.
I don't know if Walt Disney World has one of those. I bet it does. Um, but I finally got to go there about 5 years ago.
Really?
After I would go there with my friends and I would show them there's the door and it says 33 and there's a little panel with a buzzer and I go watch this and I would because they're like that's not anything. I'm like yeah it is. Watch. I'd open the panel and I'd push the button and then take off and then someone would open the door and look around. This is when I was in high school and I just heard about it and you could see
Right.
it's upstairs. Um, and then a friend of mine knew she worked at the park and she had met President Richard Nixon's brother
Wow.
and one of his brothers, I don't know which one, and this brother of President Nixon was a member of Club 33. And they've changed the rules now, but it used to be if a member of Club 33 invited you to the restaurant, you got to go and that person didn't have to come with you.
Wow.
So he made reservations for us and it was for her birthday. So there were 6 of us. And it's the only problem is whatever your cost of your meal is whatever the cost of admission to the park is.
Oh,
So if it costs you $100 to get in the park, you get in the park for free, but your meal's going to cost $100, and it's priced in a way that you can do it.
yeah.
So, but it was funny as me, we were all just cast members there, but it was funny to be there and then be drinking beer in Disneyland. And we're
Yeah,
like,
that's
well,
weird.
because I know it's the rules are different, right? In most of the Florida parks and at
Yeah.
California Adventure you can drink, but in Disneyland it's forbidden. And we're like, hey, we're drinking in the park. And one of my skipper goat buddies goes, well, I used to drink in the park all the time, but
Oh no.
that was off stage by the boats. But yeah, but it was fun. Amazing food, absolutely stunning, amazing food. So I got to go there and I took a bunch of napkins that say 33 on them. And we took a bunch of pictures and then they changed the rules where it's virtually impossible for people that aren't members to get in the club now. So I kind of got to go before it was impossible.
I know I'm trying to do my networking and meet different people like I'm meeting you and stuff. Maybe eventually I'll come across somebody that's 33.
Yeah, I thought it was never going to happen. Because I didn't know anybody who knew anybody. And then a friend of mine who was a skipper, she's like, "Hey, want to go to Club 33 for my birthday?" I'm like, yes. She's like, "Oh, I met Richard Nixon's brother." I'm like, "Wait, the president, Richard Nixon?" She's, "Yeah, his brother's like in his 80s." And
Wow.
she's like, "So she told me to call it, so I called him." And he said, "Sure." And so that's how we got in. Yeah.
It's amazing just people you meet that you would never even know.
Yeah, and we got dressed up in suits and ties, and my wife wore a really pretty dress because we'd see people at Jungle Cruise who would come by in like suits and women dresses, and you're like, oh, yeah, they're going to Club 33 because why else would you dress like that at Disneyland unless you're going to have a fancy dinner?
So I got to keep the eye out for the people that are dressed really nice.
Yeah, unusually like almost like black tie, like that kind of level of dress. Those are the ones that are going to Club 33. Yeah. Yeah.
So another thing, and I know, like, I've never been to California Disney World or Disneyland. Um, is it the same there as it is here, where all of the trash is like underground?
No,
No.
no. Everything at Disney World is when they built Disneyland, they're like, huh, we're not doing that again. And then when they built Florida, they fixed it. Yeah.
Hmm.
So at Disneyland, you'll see people come and just like at anywhere, they take the trash bags out and they put them in the big carts and push them backstage. And you'll see people. And maybe I don't, maybe me and my buddy noticed this more because we were cast members and we were looking for it. But at Disney World, you don't see Tomorrowland people in Adventureland. Like you only see people in their land. Where at Disneyland, you see people walking like we would see pirates and then ladies, people dressed for Haunted Mansion walk by the Jungle Cruise all day long
Really?
because there's no tunnels, there's no secret way to get there.
That makes
And
sense.
so they'd stop by and say hi. And hey, how's it going? So you chat with them. And so my friends from Florida were like, "Oh no, you didn't go over there, and there was no reason to walk by there
Nope.
because there were tunnels, and so you would never have gone over there." I'm like, "Oh, okay," because at Disneyland it was, but Walt didn't like that, so that's why the tunnel thing was built. And the trash thing, at Florida, I thought was just genius,
Yeah.
absolutely genius way to do it. Um, but in California, it's still old school.
Hmm.
Yeah, no tunnels at all.
Yeah, it's weird because like a few times there might have been one or two times where I saw somebody from a different land in like a obviously somewhere they're not supposed to be, but most of
Uh-huh.
the time it's you see somebody either carrying a bag or with a backpack on and they're leaving the park and you're like, okay,
Yeah,
they probably changed out of their uniform and now they're leaving because
yeah,
you don't want to see that.
yeah. But at Disneyland, you see people walking with their lunches and their books and all the time. Yeah.
Hmm.
We used to have this job that me and some of my friends had one summer. We were called area greeters.
Hmm.
And like we would work to help guests out on the whole west side of the park. Um, and so my friend that did it that worked at Big Thunder would wear his Big Thunder outfit. He could walk anywhere on the western side of the park. And when me and my buddies would do it, we'd dress in our Jungle Cruise outfits. And I'm like, well, I can't go over to Splash Mountain. They're like, well, yeah, they need you go. I'm like, oh. So I would go over there and I would just feel weird, like I'm in the wrong clothes. But at Disneyland, it's not like on the parade. If you have a parade shift on Main Street, you used to just wear your regular costume from wherever you were from.
Really?
And so they switched back and forth. You used to have to wear a special costume with a bow tie and a little vest.
Yeah.
But so many people like me hate parade shifts, so we would just call in sick and not do it. So they decided, let's make everybody go to we'll just randomly grab people from attractions and make them work the parade shift.
Hmm.
So everybody started wearing regular, just random, whatever your location clothes were. But I think they've gone back to where they wear their funky clothes now, like
That'd be
specific.
very unique to see. They're like, oh, that's a skipper. Or like, oh, he's from Frontierland. Or like, in a
Yeah,
parade?
yeah. And that was for when I worked there for a long time, that was normal. You would wear your location outfit.
Why is
Yeah.
it that you didn't want to do parade shifts?
Again, I didn't like them because it was very negative. It was a lot of, I'm sorry, you can't sit there. Can you please move? Can you please
Mm,
keep this aisle clear? Can you keep walking? And just it was like putting ropes up and telling people to move and they can't sit there. And it was just constantly doing that. And I don't, maybe I wasn't the best Disney employee ever, but I'm like, I'm not here just to sit here and tell people don't do this and don't do that. I want to entertain people and I want to have fun and give people a good experience.
right.
And yeah, so that's why I didn't like care for working for Fantasmic a lot. And that's out in the rivers of America. I know in Walt Disney World, it's its own show building
Yep.
somewhere, but it just happens in the middle of the Disneyland park. So you got to prepare for that. Um, yeah, but I didn't. And after I worked there for a while, the guys that did the scheduling knew that I didn't like those and they wouldn't give them to me, which was nice.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. So I kind of had that ethic where if they called me and said, hey, can you come in today? And my answer was yes. Or you're supposed to be here at 6. Can you get here right now? I'm like, okay. Like that way, if I needed something, they always helped me out.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where they knew that when the schedule came to them from the main schedulers, they would get it at their level and kind of tinker with it. And one of the guys told me later, yeah, if we saw your name on a parade thing, we would automatically take it out and just put it in jungle. We're like, nope, he wants jungle.
Well, that
And I'm
was
like,
really nice.
it was super nice. And then, because there were skippers that wanted to work parades, they didn't want to, they got tired of jungle or whatever. They would just always switch me out and switch other people in. So I thought it was great. Yeah.